Welcome to episode 78 of Talking Dairy. I'm your host, Jack McGowan. In today's podcast, we are celebrating 20 years of DairyBase, DairyNZ's online platform for recording and reporting standardised dairy farm physical and financial information. DairyBase uses key performance indicators and benchmarks to help farmers better understand their farm system and its performance. We'll be talking with DairyBase Operations Manager Jodie Goudswaard and dairy farmer Therese Earls, who will reflect on 20 years' worth of DairyBase data. Jodie will talk through how DairyBase works and what we've learned from 20 years of collecting data and supporting farmers with DairyBase insights. Then we'll talk to Therese, who will share her experience using DairyBase and the practical applications she makes to her own farm business in Mangakino. Tēnā korua, welcome to the podcast, Jodie and Therese. Let's start by hearing a little about you both. Jodie, what's your background?
So originally was an event manager in the middle of Wellington. I was down there for about 8 years, very far from farming. And then my husband decided to go dairy farming. So I am both a dairy farmer and work for DairyNZ and have been working for DairyNZ for about 10 years now. And we brought our first farm. We are about to start our third season on our baby farm, we call it. We calve about 180 cows. So, yeah.
So did you grow up in Wellington or urban?
No, so I grew up on a farm in the Waikato, but didn't ever expect to go back and live on a farm. Loved Wellington, really, but things happen, right? Love.
Thank you, Jodie. And Therese, tell us about yourself.
I grew up just out of Rotorua on a dairy farm, so born and bred dairy farmer. Just always wanted to go dairy farming. So, went to Lincoln, did some travel and, went dairy farming. Going to our fifth season on our farm now and got 2 little kids in tow.
You sound like a very busy person. Jodie, are you able to share what your role is at DairyNZ?
Yeah, so I am the DairyBase Operations Manager. Only 7 months into the job, so still finding my feet a bit. Prior to that, I was a DairyBase data analyst, and then before that, I spent about 7 years travelling all over New Zealand, visiting farmers and collecting their DairyBase data. So I love what I do, and I've been doing it for a long time now.
For farmers that are listening who may not be familiar with DairyBase, give us a brief on what DairyBase is and what it has to offer farmers and the sector.
Yep, so DairyBase provides the industry with accurate and reliable data. It's a benchmarking tool that allows farmers to understand their own farm system, but you can also compare your data and your performance to other farms. So whether your goal is to be in the top 20% for operating profit, or you want to track your own farm's performance over time. And there's also an industry good component where the data that we collect is used for both scientific research and policy, where DairyNZ can advocate for farmers.
I hear we're celebrating 20 years of DairyBase this year. Tell us what's changed over that time.
Pretty exciting, right? So when we started, we had 13 farms, which is pretty cool. And so the biggest change is that we've now grown to over 2,000 farms each year. And also the level of data provided back then has changed quite a lot. In 2012, we introduced Baseline, where farmers give us environmental data as well. And I suppose the other big thing is the reports that we provide to farmers where they can access their information is a lot more detailed as well. But going from 13 farms to 2,000 is probably our biggest difference.
And you talked about being able to benchmark against other farmers. How does the number of farms involved in DairyBase help with being able to benchmark?
Yeah, so to be able to benchmark, we have to have a minimum of 20 farms, and that information is all, we call it aggregated or average. So now with 2,000 farms, there is a lot more ability to be able to benchmark yourself against similar farms. So for example, for us, we can benchmark ourselves against owner-operators in the Matamata-Piako District Council area. If you're maybe a split calving farm in the Waikato, we've got enough farms that you can benchmark just against those. So there is so many different options for benchmarks, whether it's your farm setup, contract milker, owner with a contract milker, your farm system. People may want to benchmark only against System 3 farms, once a day farms. Yeah, there's all sorts of, I think we actually worked out there was over 3,000 different benchmarks that you could do. And as long as there's 20 farms in that benchmark, you can pull out that information, which is pretty cool.
Therese, can you provide us with an overview of your farm operation?
Yep. So we are just in Mangakino. We are just shy of 200 hectares, milking 520 cows. Like I said, this is our 5th season. We have myself and my husband and 2 other guys on farm at the moment. We are spring calving.
How long have you been using DairyBase, and what led you to start using the platform in the first place?
Well, I have to say a disclaimer, we started using DairyBase because it was an incentive from Maraka when we were share milking. So that was our initial get into it. And then we were kind of like, oh my God, what is this? It was just like, oh my God, look at all this information. And so we're just like, why isn't everyone doing this? Like, I'm delighted that there's 2,000 farms, but I'm also kind of shocked that there's only 2,000 farms. Yeah, why would you not want an in-depth view of it, of your business, and benchmark and find out, well, why mine was higher, but why was it higher, Yeah, Maraka was the initial push into it. So that's been now, it was 3 years share milking and 4 years owning the farm.
Your enthusiasm for having access to really good data to help you with your business is, quite infectious.
That's good.
In terms of how you use DairyBase, what is most valuable to you when working through what's working well in your farm business and identifying opportunities?
Probably, like I said, like you go through it. We're actually, both my husband and I, are quite excited when the DairyBase comes out. And you're like, oh, you get your accounts, but it doesn't benchmark you. So yeah, finding out if we're higher in something or if we're really low in something, going back through your accounts, and like we use Figured as well, finding out why we were higher or why that number popped out compared to the rest of it is quite important. We can actually go back and say, okay, well, we had this little problem this year, that's why it was higher. Or we can go back through and go, actually, how can we make that better? That's probably really valuable. And then we're also looking to sell our farm this year and move maybe out of district, not sure yet. So looking at the DairyBase in other regions and then comparing it back to our DairyBase is actually really important, because you don't have that information anywhere else unless you have a friend that is willing to share their accounts, and then that's just one farm. So being like Southland's an example, we always hear that, oh, they're so much more expensive down there. Right? You look at their DairyBase and you go, oh, actually they're not. So yeah, it takes a little bit of the scariness of moving to a different district out.
That's very interesting. When I think back to when we started share milking, we certainly didn't have access to that kind of thing.
No, and then even for the banks, they love it. You give them a budget, especially for share milkers and contract milkers first time. You've either just got to pluck numbers out of the air, trust the farm owner that they're giving you the right information, or you can go to the DairyBase and be like, da, 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 da. And the banks are like, okay, you haven't just made up this number.
Jodie, now that DairyBase has been available for 20 years, can you tell us a bit about the benefits of having 20 years worth of data for farmers in the sector?
There's a few different benefits. So with 2 decades of data, both farmers and analysts can look at those long-term trends. So things like milk production, but also farm working expenses, feed efficiency, things like that. And then also look at those, seasonal variations. We have droughts and floods and all of those kind of things, and also overall industry trends. We do have 2 farmers that have been in DairyBase every single year of those 20 years, which is pretty cool. But it allows farmers to make some informed decisions about their operations, because they can look back over the years that they've been doing it internally. So it provides us with a robust data set for our science and policy teams, and means that they can more effectively advocate for change. And I think the other final thing is, it is our evidence base here at DairyNZ, and we can see how different things have impacted farmers in New Zealand over time, and then we can plan for the future from that.
And DairyBase data is used across a number of other DairyNZ tools and publications which are available to farmers. Can you share more about what those are?
Yeah, so I think that Economic Farm Survey is probably what most people know of. And that's an annual summary of our dairy industry statistics. That's done by our economics team, and they use the DairyBase data to build that. And anyone can download it from the DairyNZ website. There's also the Econ Tracker, which is coming up to celebrate 1 year, which is pretty cool. So that uses DairyBase financial information. And there is a few other tools. One of them is called the Pasture Potential tool, and that uses our DairyBase physical information. So that's some of the probably more well-known tools that we use here in DairyNZ.
Thank you, Jodie. Now, back to you, Therese. So we're talking about being able to benchmark against other farms that are similar or dissimilar or other regions. Are there some things that you are happy to be higher or lower on? I'm just a bit curious about how you approach that benchmarking.
If I have a valid reason why we're higher, I'm okay with it. If I can look back through the year or even the last 2 years on my accounts or my DairyBase and say, actually, this is why I was higher this year, because we, had a wicked drought compared to everyone else. Like, we counted in the Waikato, where we're kind of South Waikato, So yeah, we do get a little bit more droughty down here. So if we've spent more on feed because we've had a wicked drought compared to everywhere else, or if I can justify why we're quite low in or high in something, it's not so bad. If I don't know why, I'm just like, oh crap, we've got to do better. And finding out that you're actually spending less on animal health compared to everyone else is actually quite nice.
I know there are some farmers that they do choose to spend higher or lower than perhaps comparable farms, and I was curious whether there was anything like that for you.
Our fur is quite high, actually, compared to the rest of the Waikato, and I'm not going to lie, I'm not 100% sure why, because it's high every year. I don't know whether we just put on more nitrogen than the rest of the country or quite what it is. I'd love to go to someone else's farm that has lower imports and be like, what do you do? And I know our animal health is quite low compared to everyone else because we probably just don't call the vet that much. And we don't use a lot of seeders. We know that that's one of our farm policies, so that has a big impact. And like I said, as long as I've got a reason behind it, other than the fur, that really stands out, that's a lot higher, that I can be like, yeah, no, I'm fine with that. Everything else is like, no, I want it lower.
So obviously Therese is very engaged. Jodie, what opportunities are there for other farmers to engage more with DairyBase if they're considering joining or would like to know more about how regional farmer data is used?
So if you're around at the field days, come and visit us at the DairyNZ stand. We'll be in the pavilion and we are going to have someone from the DairyBase team on site the whole time. We've got a little competition running. But other than that, we do run regional events from Northland right down to Southland called Bringing DairyBase to Life. So they were run earlier this year and they will run early next year. And so that data is regionally focused and a really good way to see how you may compare to others in your region. They talk about sort of what the biggest influence on operating profit per hectare may be, and it always creates some really good discussion. For the record, it does depend on the region, but the top two influences of operating profit is pasture and crop harvested and operating expenses per kilogram of milk solid. So that's probably some of the best ways is to, if you can, come to our DairyBase, Bringing DairyBase to Life workshops that we've been running throughout the country.
And I'm going to ask a little bit more about the competition at Field Days. You said to enter the competition, they can complete level 1 or sign up if they haven't ever been part of DairyBase. What's level 1? Like, what does it cover and how long is that going to take?
So level 1 physical is sort of that farm business description. It takes maybe 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. If you're already a member, and it normally takes 5 minutes because we just double check, is the land area still the same? We look at what staff you employ, your total production for the season and your peak cows. That's sort of the main question. And that, takes 5 to 10 minutes. To do that part. If you're really keen, then you don't have to do it with us at the field days, but there's a level 2 physical, which has a bit more detail around things like fertiliser, reproduction, peak milk production, the feed that you're importing, all of that kind of stuff. So that's optional to do the level 2 physical, but provides you with a bit more information to benchmark and analyse.
Thank you. Okay, so we've talked about level 1 and level 2 and getting involved. What does it cost for farmers to get involved in DairyBase?
Well, it's really exciting. We've only just been able to announce it. It is actually free. So we used to charge $100 for the financial analysis, but from the 1st of June this year, there is no cost at all. Talk to us or join up and send us your data.
That is fabulous news. We love free. How do farmers get their data in? So obviously we've heard about doing it at field days. Outside of that?
Yep, so go to the DairyNZ website /DairyBase or search for DairyBase, and it will tell you how to register if you are new to DairyBase, or if you are already registered. If you haven't already, in the next week or two, you will be emailed a level 1 form to complete. You literally complete it and email it back to us. That's pretty much it. That's how you get started.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much for talking with us today, Therese and Jodie. We really appreciate you sharing how you use DairyBase in your farm business, Therese, and how DairyBase has helped farmers to do that for the last 20 years, Jodie, and how easy it is to get involved and now free. As Jodie mentioned, Field Days is upon us. If you're attending Field Days this week, DairyNZ's looking forward to connecting with you. We have a range of interesting things on site, as well as something for the kids and things to win. And yes, this includes DairyBase celebrating their 20th anniversary. The team will be there ready to show you how they can support you through the online platform and where you may sit on regional benchmarking graphs. Our expert team will also be on the stand to answer your questions, including an opportunity to talk with some of our scientists, board members and the leadership team. Visit us in the pavilion at site PC44. Hope to see you there. Mā te wā, noho ora mai.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Talking Dairy. Check the show notes on where to go for more information on this topic. And if you have any ideas on future episodes, please send an email to talkingdairy@dairynz.co.nz.